إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد, we start in the name of Allah the Most High, the one to whom belongs all praise, the one who controls all affairs, the one who gives, the one who takes, glorified and exalted is He. And we send peace and blessings upon the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam and his family and his followers until the end of time. Ameen. The lives that we live are filled with symbols. And I think that one of the challenges that we have is that with all of the distractions, oftentimes we lose sight of those symbols. So with the distractions of maybe day-to-day family problems or concerns about jobs and communities and all of these type of things, we start to lose sight of those symbols that tie us to that which is bigger. Or at least those symbols that just tie us to something else, more than something immediate in front of us. And sometimes those symbols are big, and sometimes those symbols are small. But nonetheless, life is filled with them. So for example, all of us probably on the way over here, except for those who are fortunate enough to live close enough to be able to walk, all of us probably passed a street light or a stop sign. And for us, that's an immediately recognizable and understandable symbol. Even my son, who's 3 years old, now understands. We start to drive down the street and we come to the light and he'll say, "It's red, Baba, you have to stop." Or it's green, that green means go. Green, you can go now. See, these are symbols that are immediately recognizable to us in our lives. And there's symbols that are a little bit further, like for example, what someone wears. You know, you might deduce, I was going to speak at an event a few weeks ago, and I asked someone, should I wear this overcoat or not? And they said, yeah, you should wear the overcoat, otherwise they're not going to believe that you're an imam. So this is a symbol. This is a symbol that shows people, okay, maybe this person might actually know what they're talking about. Sometimes symbols are true, sometimes they're not true. But they're symbols nonetheless. Sometimes they're more complicated and sophisticated than that. You know, for example, flags are a symbol. Could be the flag of any particular country, could be the flag of a people, could be a flag that represents an idea, but those are also symbols that they take you immediately into a realm that's deeper and wider and broader and has more meaning than just the symbol itself. Another type of symbol sometimes is also different categories of people. And in thinking about this, I thought something different about the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, where he says that those who لا يوقر كبيرنا ولا يرحم صغيرنا فليس منا. Or in another narration also adds ولا يعلم لعالمنا حقا فليس منا. You know, where the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, he says, the one who does not show reverence to the elderly and does not show mercy and compassion to the young and does not know the right of the scholar from amongst us, then they're not from us. If you think about this from the angle of symbols, it takes even a different perspective. Why? Because the elderly is a very clear symbol of reverence. The natural response to someone who is older is that you have reverence to them. It's like, this person's older, they have more experience, they've gone through things that I haven't gone through, they're farther along in the journey of life, I have to show some reverence to them. So to reject that natural inclination that's so clear in that symbol is a problem, it's a symptom of a soul that's very sick. Same thing with someone who's young, right? When you see a young child and you find someone who treats young children harshly, you know, the immediate response of a person who's not even healthy, just a person who's not sick inside, is that when they see a child, they feel soft, right? You feel happy. You show a picture of a baby to almost anyone and they smile. Right? Because it's a symbol that connects us immediately to a deeper concept, which is the idea of compassion. So someone who rejects that also, it's very problematic. Same thing with someone who rejects the scholar of deen, because that's an immediate representation of deen. Now that is not to say that everyone is righteous. Sure, there's people who have knowledge that are good, and there's people who have knowledge. Allah guide them in us, right? But for the good ones, definitely you have to respect the symbol. When we think about this and we think about symbols in our lives, we realize that right now, in these days, we are upon perhaps the greatest symbol of Allah in the earth. And that is Hajj. That is Hajj. Unfortunately, I think that as time passes and generations continue to pass, for some reason there seems to be some disconnect from the idea of Hajj. It's still very strong, but perhaps not the way that it used to be. Like for example, this morning I was thinking about how in the United States, in the Muslim community here, we often complain that Hajj is very expensive. You know, it's like $10,000, $12,000 to go to Hajj. That's a lot of money, right? Who has $10,000 laying around? But then you think about people in these other countries, it's very common, the story that you hear. You see someone who's elderly and they're in Hajj. You ask them, how did you get to Hajj? They say, I saved my whole life. Right? So if you saved $100 a month for 15 years, you'd be going to Hajj. Right? All of a sudden, it's not such a big deal, but the perspective is different, right? I have a friend of mine in this community, he was teaching a Saturday school class to some middle school students. So middle school students, we can say for sure, are under the age of 15, right? The reason I'm bringing this up, you'll see in a second. He asked the middle school students, he said, what is coming up soon? Why are these days so important? What's so special about these days? This is last week. They all kind of stopped. They were thinking a little bit, what's so special about these days, so on. And one of them says, yeah, I know what it is. It's 9/11. That's funny, but it's really not funny. I said, it's 9/11. Everyone in the class said, yeah, it's 9/11. This week coming up is 9/11. He said, no, it's not 9/11 yet. I mean, yeah, that's there. But it's Hajj. Like the day of Arafah is coming, the day of Eid is coming, the days of Tashriq are coming. These are أفضل الأيام عند الله تعالى للعمل الصالح. These 10 days of Dhul Hijjah, the best days with Allah for good deeds. What is the big occasion? Why is that a problem? Because we are now dealing with a generation of young people who were not even alive when 9/11 happened, and they understand their identity as Muslims through the lens of security before they understand their identity as the identity of people who submit to God. You ask them, what is it? They say 9/11. Monday's Eid. Sunday's Arafah. Arafah, the day that some of the people that came to Umar bin Khattab, they said, the Jews, they said, if this was a day that happened, like we would know, what is this verse? If this verse was revealed to us, we would know when it happened. He said, I know when it happened. It was Arafah, it was Friday, we were in Hajj, like with the Prophet ﷺ. He knows everything. This is the day. This is the day when blessings are descended. This is the day when the entire ummah is coming together and making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everyone is asking forgiveness. People have put themselves in the most utterly devoted position they can possibly be in. This is the ultimate symbol of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Hajj is incredible. And Allah said, what about ذَلِكَ وَمَن يُعَذِّمْ شَعَائِرَ اللَّهِ فَإِنَّهَا مِن تَقْوَى الْقُلُوبِ. That and those who magnify and glorify the symbols of Allah, it's from the taqwa of your heart. It's from the consciousness of the heart, because these symbols are important. And it is a powerful symbol, the Hajj. And I want to talk about that in two different ways. The first is how it is a powerful symbol from its inception all the way up to what it signifies today, and also how it's a powerful symbol in the second half of the khutbah in Islam in America. So when we think about Hajj and how it happens, how does the place of Mecca occur? How does this house of worship occur? It's an incredible story, right? For most of us, it's review. But as our teachers used to always say, fil i'ada ifada. It's not always about hearing something new. It's about hearing something again, because in repetition, there's benefit. You repeat things, certain things, they need to be repeated. They need to be repeated, because no day is the same. One person I know, he went to one of his teachers, and he said Salaam alaikum to him, and the teacher said Wa alaikum salam, and then he asked him, the teacher asked the student, how are you doing? And he said, alhamdulillah, same old, same old. Teacher said, A'udhu billah, he turned around and walked away from him. Why? Why would you do that? Because the first principle of one of the major principles of Aqidah is that Allah is al-Khaliq. Allah is the creator. And the Allah, the God that we worship, Allah, is not a God that created everything in creation and then just left it to be, to run its course. We believe that Allah is ever living, that Allah is constantly engaged in the affairs of the world. So to say that, how is everything going? You say same old, it means you're not recognizing that it's never the same. So even if you hear the same reminder, it's never the same. So we think about Hajj and how Hajj started. Hajj starts from how? From Ibrahim alayhi salam, the very beginning of the story. It starts with Mecca, right? Ibrahim alayhi salam goes and he leaves Hajar and Ismail in Mecca with nobody there. Nobody there. I mean, imagine telling people now would probably start panicking if you told your children to go and drive somewhere without a cell phone. Like, no, make sure you forgot your cell phone. I'm like, I didn't know what happened. 45 minutes, I couldn't check the tracking thing that tells me exactly where you're going, right? Or our spouse or our family members, whatever. He had to leave them in a place nothing is there. And he didn't even tell them why. He didn't even tell them why. Hajar alayhi salam, she tells him, why are you doing this? What's going on? He's just walking away. And she asked him, then she's a very smart woman, she said, Allahu amaraka bihada? Is it Allah who has commanded you to do this? And Ibrahim alayhi salam, he indicates that yes, that is the case. And she says, then he will not forsake us. Then he will not forsake us. Imagine, this is an event. The 3-4 million people that are going in Mecca right now starts with this event. As one of the lessons that we have to learn then from the symbol is that sometimes you plant a seed and you don't know what the result is. I mean, if you were to ask people 15, 20, 30 years ago, 45 years ago, you go to them and tell them when the Garden Grove Masjid started, you know, if you were to go to them and tell them, we're going to have X number of masajid in Orange County, it's going to be one of the largest Muslim communities in the country, we're going to have this many imams, we're going to have this organization, and that organization, and that organization, and that organization, you're going to go to Woodbury Elementary School and you're going to have 10 Muslims in your class, you think they're going to believe you? They're not going to believe you. Do you think the people who planted the seed could even see where the seed was going? You think Ibrahim alayhi salam knew that 4 million people are going to be making Hajj in 2016? He doesn't need to know. What he needs to know is, Allahu amaraka bihada? Is it Allah who has commanded you to do this? Yes, okay. Then it's fine. And Hajar alayhi salam, she does what she needs to do. You know, part of one of the big lessons of Hajj is there's a plan of Allah, and then there's what we see. The plan of Allah is far vaster than what we see, right? The second major lesson is that you have to trust in Allah, which we saw also right there. The third major lesson is that you have to put your effort in, right? Hajar, when she's left there, she didn't say, okay, Allah commanded you to do it, okay, good, and then she just sat there. She didn't say, okay, Allah commanded him to do it, so it's done now, I'm just okay, it's fine, no problems. He told me to pray, I'm just going to pray. I'm not going to worry about if my prayer is correct, if it's not correct, how to make it better, if I'm doing it in the right time, if I'm doing it in the right way. Forget all of it, I'm just going to do it because Allah told me to do it, I'm just going to do it. No, Allah told you to do it, left me here, I'm going to do what I need to do. So she goes between the mountains. So we go between the mountains. We've been going between the mountains for so long, they're not even really mountains anymore. Right? When you go to Mecca, people go to Umrah and they go to Hajj, right? When you go there, what do you find? Like a couple buildings, you go up the stairs and then you're like, oh, there's the top of Safa and Marwa. It doesn't even feel like a mountain anymore, right? Because we've been going back and forth between these mountains for so long. But you have to put in the effort. You see it also with Ibrahim alayhi salam when he's told to build the house. إِذْ يَرْفَعُ إِبْرَاهِيمُ الْقَوَاعِدَ مِنَ الْبَيْتِ وَإِسْمَعِيلُ. You know, when Ibrahim and Ismail built the house, they do what Allah told them to do. When Ibrahim alayhi salam is commanded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَأَذِّن فِي النَّاسِ بِالْحَجِّ. I mean, imagine if the microphone stopped working, the people outside would start complaining. They'd be like, we can't figure out when you're supposed to pray. Can't figure out when we're making takbir. Can't figure out when you're in your sujood or when you're standing. Ibrahim alayhi salam, Allah tells him, go and just command people to the Hajj. Was he going to put it on Twitter or something? He said, what am I going to do? What do I do? Ya Allah, like I'm going to call people to Hajj. I'm going to adhan fi nasi bin Hajj. How do I do that? Allah told him, you just make the call and I'm the one that's going to deliver it. You just make the call and I'm the one that's going to deliver it. Right? So Hajj, the symbolism of Hajj is magnificent. And that's just getting to Mecca and the Kaaba existing in the first place. Let alone the stuff that happens when we go there every single time now. Like you have symbols, for example, that come from Hajj, the idea of multiplicity from unity. Very, very important symbol that comes from Hajj. Multiplicity from unity. That from one thing, many different things can blossom. You have one act of pilgrimage, all types of different people. Right? You have one call to come to that place, you have millions of people there. You have one type of clothes that's being worn, and all different still looks of how that clothes is being worn. You have multiplicity that comes from oneness. You have also this idea of equality. You have an idea of devotion. You have the idea of tawaf. There's a great symbol in tawaf, this kind of concept of you're going around and you're focusing on something. You're going around and you're focusing on the Kaaba. When we're going around our lives, we should be focusing on Allah. Right? Like it's still, there's a symbolism that attracts to more than just what's going on in the Hajj itself. So in the second half of the khutbah, we'll talk about that a little bit more, and specifically in relation to Islam in America. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه عباد الله أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله. I remind myself and everyone to have God consciousness in all affairs. If people can move in as much as possible to make room for those who are still coming in or who came in the beginning and you're just stuck in the back. So if you can make room, that would be great, inshallah. So in full disclosure, probably the vast majority of the people in this prayer hall are not going to understand what I'm referring to right now, but I know at least a handful will. This entire khutbah was motivated by KG, the rapper, who I had no idea who this person was, to be very honest, until a few days ago. And I'm going to come back to that. But at least for some people, I'm sure you guys understand what I'm talking about. And that's because in America, the symbol of Hajj is undoubtedly connected to another very important symbol of Islam in America, and that is Al-Hajj Malik al-Shabazz, Malcolm X, rahimahullah. You cannot break the connection between these two. If you are a person in the United States of America, especially a person, probably people of color, more likely to be more aware of the legacy of Malcolm X. But if you are in America and you know anything about the Hajj, it's automatically connected to Malcolm X. So now you have two symbols that are automatically connected. And if you think about these two symbols and why, part of the reason why they're automatically connected, it's actually in the word for Hajj itself. You know, when in the books of fiqh, you always start in these sections with definitions. And they'll tell you Hajj means qasd. It means to, the way I would translate it in this particular context is it means to journey with intentionality. It means to journey with intentionality. Which is to say that you're going somewhere and you know why you're going there and you know what that journey's about. And that is really what Hajj is, right? Hajj is a journey that you intend for the sake of Allah to leave your home and your family and your belongings and everything you know, to travel to this far-off place and perform these rites, the logic of which are very difficult to understand, as complete acts of devotion and remembrance of the legacy of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Ibrahim alayhi salam. That is an act of journeying with intentionality. And in every single one of our lives, we have to journey with intentionality. It's not enough to just exist. Just existing is not enough. So why do I exist? Where am I going? What am I about? Dr. Omar Farooq Abdullah, one of the great scholars of Islam in America, in the beginning of, I think it was 1970, he read the autobiography of Malcolm X. And when he began to read it, he couldn't put it down. He read it all the way through the night. In the morning, he put it down and he looked out around the area that he was living in and he asked himself, what did you get from this book? I've said this here before. What did you get from this book? He said, I got two things. I only told you guys the first one before. The first thing that I got is that Allah and God are the same thing. It sounds insignificant, but it's extremely significant in the American context. So the second thing that I got is that God exists. Because I can see clearly the way that God guided Malcolm, and it's an evidence that he exists. Malcolm, if you go to his autobiography and you read the chapter on Mecca, and he'll tell you the story of how he went on this pilgrimage, which must be read. I used to think that it only must be read for people who are growing up and living their lives as Muslims in America on kind of like the next generation type thing. Recently, I had a conversation with someone and made me realize everyone has to read the autobiography of Malcolm X. His brother came up to me, elderly Pakistani brother, and he said, you know, when I first came to this country, I had a lot of discrimination in my heart against black people. This is very real. I think everyone already understands that, but it's very real. He said, I had a lot of discrimination in my heart against black people. I said, okay, what happened? He said, I read the autobiography of Malcolm X, and it took it all out of my heart. And it completely changed my perspective on the entire thing. Then I was like, wow, I didn't even realize this angle of it, right? So Dr. Omar reads it, he says, Malcolm, Allah and God are the same thing, and that God guided Malcolm, God must exist. Right? This is the great symbol of Malcolm. Thousands and thousands and thousands of people have been guided through that same symbol. Because Malcolm was a person who journeyed in his life with intentionality. And that meant changes at different places, conflicts at different places, struggles at different places, but he was journeying with intentionality. And that joins him then with the symbol of Hajj in some ways. Obviously, Hajj is Hajj. But there's a similarity there in the underlying effort of it. And these are symbols that keep on giving, and that's what brings me back to KG the rapper, right? As far as I know, he hasn't said it, but I can almost guarantee that there is some understanding in his mind of the experience that Malcolm had on the Hajj that's related to him going on Hajj. I can almost guarantee it. Because for people who have read the autobiography of Malcolm X and people who have been interested in Islam as a result of the autobiography of Malcolm X, the first thing they think about is Hajj. I have to go to Hajj. And that's why, as I told one of the brothers in this community a few years ago, one of the young brothers, I said the most honorable title in the American Muslim scene is not Sheikh, is not Imam, is not Alim, is not activist, is not political commentator, is not senator or mayor or any of these other things. The most honorable title in the Muslim American landscape is Al-Hajj. Because of Sayyid Shuhada America. For anyone who understands it. Sayyid Shuhada America is Malcolm X. Allah yarhamu. So we're living in these days which are great days of amazing symbolism. And as we move into the weekend, as we get closer and closer to the days of Hajj, it's important to remind ourselves of that. That even if we're not there, focusing entirely on that devotion and worship, we can be here and focus on some worship. We can be here and reorient ourselves. We can be here and turn ourselves towards Allah so that we can journey towards Him with intentionality, so that we can be hujjaj even if we're not in Hajj. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept from us and to give us the good of this life and the next. Oh Allah, forgive us of our sins and our shortcomings, accept from us our deeds, enter us into paradise, keep us away from your punishment. Oh Allah, give food to those who are hungry, give shelter to those who are shelterless, give victory to those who are oppressed. Oh Allah, those of our loved ones and those of our community who have gone and sought you intentionally and purposefully and gone to your house to worship you, please bring them back to us safely with Hajj that is accepted, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Oh Allah, help these rites and these acts of worship to be carried out without any injuries or tragedies, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Oh Allah, accept from us our deeds, enter us into paradise, keep us away from your punishment. اللهم اغفر لنا ذنوبنا وإسرافنا في أمرنا وثبت أقدامنا. اللهم بارك فينا وبيننا وألف بين قلوبنا وصفوفنا. اللهم كن معنا ولا تكن علينا. انصر إخواننا المستضعفين في كل مكان. افتح عليهم يا فتاح يا عليم. اللهم بارك فينا وبيننا وألف بين قلوبنا يا رب العالمين. ربنا تقبل منا واعف عنا وآتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. وصلى اللهم وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا وأقيموا الصلاة.